Yo, what's going on, guys? GZTV. Welcome back to another video, and in this video we are going to be discussing the ninth and the second to last episode in the Dahmer series. I am so excited to be finishing it tonight, not because I like the killer Jeffrey Dahmer. I'm just really fascinated into what went to his mind, what are the exact details. It's a very informative TV show. It is fictitious, of course. It happened, but it's fictitious. We're not actually killing people in the show, so yeah. This one's really about the zombies that his victims. It's about the victims, I feel like. It's a victim-centric, it's the victim families-centric episode here. Not all of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims died. We know there are definitely some survivors in this case. No, not all of them. Not even talking about the escapees alone. Tracy Edwards, Ronald Flowers, Sam Sexton, Thansafone, the jogger who dodged his baseball bat, his slain victims' families is what we're really talking about here. His neighbors, even his own family, even the entire city of Milwaukee survived this guy, because it could have happened to anybody. That's kind of the harsh reality of it all, The Bogeyman, once again, this episode is directed by Jennifer Lynch, Ian Brennan, David McMillan, Riley Smith actually wrote the script for this episode, just giving you guys some info. I guess it depicts the many ways in which Dahmer haunted all these people, even while safely behind bars. And even when they're safe, even when the situation was resolved, there was so much paranoia, so many hallucinations. It became like an urban legend, this guy did. And obviously he had fans off of that. We're going to talk about that in this episode as well. Safely for them, physically speaking, if not for himself. But that will happen eventually. They lived on, but as he longed to do with his actual physical victims, he got into their heads permanently. Wow, nice. He really was he took over a lot of these people's lives. He kind of ruined a lot of these people's lives. Obviously, killing their family members is, of course, it's justifiable why you would, have these hallucinations, not feel safe anymore, want action to be taken place, and the police force, all that stuff to ensure the safety of the Milwaukee citizens. But yeah, this episode kind of starts with his family. Lionel still struggling to make sense of where it all went wrong, what were his motives, who inspired him, stuff like that. Still kind of haunted Lionel, and still kind of Lionel, however you say his name, still kind of confused him. He's written a book about himself and Jeffrey and earned a rave review in the New York Times. So, you can look at it. From the victim's family standpoint, they kind of looked at it as look, this guy's trying to profit off of his son being an infamous person, a notorious serial killer in the Milwaukee area. But obviously, Lionel was looking at this as like a form of expression to kind of get his feelings out, kind of what he thought. He didn't really get any confirmation as to exactly why his son did it. There were no outside forces that really forced him to do it. He never really said anything about that. But this was just kind of him splurging his thoughts on the paper and kind of having some discussion points, like, why did my son do this? But he's chagrined to learn that the victims' families will be claiming any profits from the book. And this being the publishing industry, it's not like there are any profits to really begin with. It's really hard to make money as an up-and-coming author. That's kind of what it is. And even if he does, the victims' families are going to claim it. I think that makes sense to an extent. I think the father should be still cut in because he made the piece of work. And it's not like it's satirical. It's not like he's mocking the families. It's not like he's doing anything like that. So I don't know, the family shouldn't really be coming for his parents or anything. It's Jeffrey Dahmer. I think Jeffrey Dahmer is the only person that is responsible for this, I'm going to be honest. Even his wife Sherry seems inappropriately upset that the families will be garnishing Jeff's slave labor wages in prison. I don't understand. There are other prisoners that have murdered people in that prison, but it's not like they did what Jeffrey Dahmer did. It's one thing to shoot someone, it's another to make them turn into a zombie and then strangle them to death. That's not like many things that have happened in the world before. This was a very new thing. It shocked a lot of people, and they figured out what he did to their kids. Of course. After all, they just want Jeff to get the help he needs and to help other families recognizing the warning signs where they insist to themselves. Like, he needs help. That's what they're looking at it as. They're looking at him as a psychiatric case. Like, he's got something messed up in his mind, but it never really was proven that Jeffrey had problems, you know? So, I'm kind of confused as to where that came from. Is that so wrong? I mean, you guys can talk about it in the comments. I mean, is it wrong to say that he needed psychiatric help and he needed help in prison? Or do you let the piece of shit rot? I mean, honestly, if I'm not in his family, I would think leave the piece of shit to rot. So, you know, next up, we're going to talk about Glenda Cleveland. That's kind of another person that this episode focuses on a little bit, who moves back into her old apartment next to Jeff's, to her daughter's dismay. Obviously, her daughter is not really happy about it. She's kind of worried. She's kind of paranoid about the whole situation after learning exactly all the details that happened with Jeffrey Dahmer. Sure enough, she's haunted by nightmares, as are many other residents who gather together to sleep on the floor of the lobby rather than be left alone with their thoughts. Kind of get together in the hall at night to sleep together for comfort, kind of console as a community. I think that's a beautiful thing that they did, and I did not realize that. Again, this show gets into every little detail, and I feel like they are about 80% accurate in depicting everything, and I think that's why this is one of the best true crime shows. I mean, at least I've seen. Obviously, I'm not like a true crime geek, but if this actually happened and they depicted that, that's interesting. It's a really interesting detail to show, and obviously I'd have to go into further research to confirm this theory. All this comes to an end, though. First, when the lobby gatherings are banned for safety reasons, you know, people going into the hallways, probably tripping over people, not being able to get into their rooms, yada yada yada. Then when Glenda's daughter is arrested for angrily smashing the camera of some callous crime scene tourist, even when the entire building is permanently evacuated and its residents relocated, so the place can be demolished. So as we know, as the apartments stand today, it's kind of like a memorial. It's like an open yard. Like, they didn't want to put anything there out of respect for the victims' families, because obviously 12 of Dahmer's victims died there. So obviously it's a big time place. It's a very infamous place in this historical happening, I guess you could call it. So Glenda's daughter got out of hand. Her anger got the best of her, and she got arrested for assault and destruction of property. They were kind of mimicking Jeffrey Dahmer, like choking his victims, all this piece of shit, like probably some high school pieces of shit kids, douchebags, trying to get a laugh out of a serious situation, and a situation that affected the residents of that building, you know. So as she processes what she's been through, Glenda reaches out to the family of Konarak Sintamfasom to apologize for failing to prevent his murder, for listening to the police when they assured her everything was fine, even though I don't think to an extent Glenda ever really listened to the police. She just knew, like, it was their job, it's their final call on whether or not to further investigate anything, you know. So I don't think Glenda should really feel any guilt. Obviously she does, and it makes sense because she is an all-around, like, good person depicted in the show. Like, she wants to console the family, she wants to make sure that they have someone to talk to, and she was very closely connected to these murderers, and that she was right next door hearing everything, you know, and the implications of it, you know. Yeah. Let's see. His father, Santhon, a fine, stoic Kepvet Pagnase, who's been playing him for the entire episode, but we're kind of just acknowledging him because he actually gets a decent amount of dialogue. He insists there's nothing to apologize for, and obviously he's right, but again, like I said, the good person that Glenda is shines through here. But his family is subject to relentless racist harassment via anonymous phone calls, at least some of which come directly from the police department. Still angry with the punishment doled out to their brothers in blue, who handed Konarak back over to Jeffrey to be destroyed. So, yeah, I don't know if the police department actually did that, but once you find out that the police department is actually doing that, it's like, my God, of course. Like, who would have thought, I guess. The cops in question, meanwhile, are given commendations in a lavish ceremony, contrasted directly with the tiny gathering where the police chief gives Glenda a citizen's reward. And this is some good symbolism, you know, Glenda trying to be a hero and trying to prevent these cops from neglecting this situation. Meanwhile, the cops that actually neglected the situation are getting a standing ovation. for being heroes and even like acknowledging the fact that Jeffrey Dahmer existed. Like what? I don't know. Taking in Toto, the saga of the synthophones, including Brother Samsak, who's played by Braden Maniago, who is genuinely frightening nightmares about Jeffrey, his father, and Konarak, and the police who doomed them and cannot forgive them for serving as living reminders of their own callous incompetence, is one of the show's most depressing storylines. Which is saying something, and it's something that's accurate, so it's something that actually happened, and it is probably one of the most depressing things about this case, is that the police were being racist towards this family, and on top of that, their family member just died, and it was at the hands of Jeffrey Dahmer, and at the hands of the police department. They were responsible for not helping. Obviously other family figures show up. Ronald Flowers works as a counselor for gay men caught in the teeth of the AIDS crisis, which is kind of crazy because at the time, like, sexually transmitted diseases were theorized to be mainly from like homosexual men, which now that's been kind of disproven. It's been seen as like a blood disease, but back then it was like, oh, if you're homosexual, you are at risk, and if you're homosexual and you have sexual intercourse with another man, you are at risk for AIDS and HIV. Obviously, like the big case with like Magic Johnson, like he was kind of around during that time period, so it's really interesting. In an echo of the similar job held by Joyce Dahmer in the previous episode. So that's really interesting and kind of ironic. When they test negative and dodge death, he can tell them sincerely he knows how they feel. He was a gay man himself, which is kind of probably why he got the job, for sympathy. Shirley Hughes, Tony's mother, receives a copy of a comic book about Dahmer in the mail from a fan who wants her to autograph it. Like, these people were sick, and this is a real thing. This actually happened. People were fanboying over a serial killer, and they still do it with this show for some reason. Like Shirley, she sees Jeffrey watching her, never free from his gaze. I mean, everyone's kind of seeing visions of this guy, like he's haunting them forever. Catherine Dahmer, better known as Grandma, obviously, is last seen wordlessly muttering to herself in a nursing home, the victim of dementia, obviously. Old age is getting to her. Lionel visits her, and after joking that he would have gotten Rockwell Welch to play her if the planned movie adaptation of his book panned out, it was canceled by skittish producers. Tells her Jeffrey loves her in his own way and that she did her best with them both. She's like, look, I tried to make this man right. I tried to take him to church and make sure he was with God all the time. But yeah, it's too late to tell her any of this, right? Lena was like, you don't have to feel bad. You did whatever you could. In an unusually beneficent twist, veteran character actor Ken Lerner appears as Joe Zober, a real estate magnate so disgusted with the circus around Dahmer's possessions at auction, then have it all destroyed, distributing the money he raised for the auction equally between the 11 families who'd sued to create the auction in the first place. Sell them. Sell the fucking items, take the money, destroy the items, and give the money to the families. I think that's right. I mean, it's pretty much a donation, a charitable donation to the families. I mean, would you rather donate to victims of this man, or would you rather just buy his items? I don't know. After watching authority figures fuck up over and over again throughout the series, Zober's actions feel borderline miraculous, like that there was finally a certain extent of justice being served here. And where is Jeff through all this? Enjoying life behind bars, pretty much. He doesn't seem like fazed at all by the prison system, anything. He seems like he's enjoying himself. He's in solitary confinement for the time being, but of course that doesn't matter to him. All he's ever really enjoyed, other than murders, is being alone with his thoughts and kind of reflecting on himself, Meanwhile, he's popular, genuinely, if perversely popular, for the first time since the brief period in high school where other kids would egg him on when he'd do a Dahmer and pretend to be afflicted by palsy and seizures. He hasn't gotten this much attention since high school, so he's fucking loving it. He's like 31 years old in jail, feeding off attention. Fans write him letters and crucially send him money. I don't understand why they did that, but people liked the what is it called? The cultural icon that he'd become, I guess. He gives an interview alongside his father on national television, and his crimes are everywhere across the media spectrum. Like, no one can dodge this. No one can get away from this. He is an icon, like, nationwide. Like, people are looking at him as like, oh my goodness, look at this guy. Look what he did. He smirks when inmates threaten him for playing up his cannibalism in the mess hall. He seems immune to fear of the guards, who understandably hate him. Obviously, again, there's other murderers, but none of these murderers did their murders to the extent of Dahmer. So, yeah, he's so unfazed by it all. I mean, it's actually very interesting to see just how unfazed Dahmer was here. And I mean, again, it's probably accurately depicted. He's more consistently at ease in this episode than at any point throughout the previous 8 combined, really. He's like at peace with himself right now. I mean, if you know what happened to him in real life, you know where this is headed going into the 10th episode, and him being in prison for 2 episodes is probably accurate timeline-wise to the rest of the series. So yeah, can't wait to watch the finale. I'm going to be doing that tonight. We're going to be watching Walking Dead. I have a Better Call Saul review, and actually, on Hulu, they released a Hellraiser remake, which I actually thought was fire. Honestly, I really liked it. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. So leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As always, it is Jeezy TV, reviewing your favorite TV shows. You know, I'm going to get these videos out. I'm probably going to go watch some college football, have a music stream somewhat in the evening. So yeah, hopefully you guys have a rest of your day. Go to the Twitch, Jeezy TV live on Twitch, all lowercase. So yeah, I'm out. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.